Welcome to Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking. What's this show all about? Well, it's all in the title. He enjoys interviewing people about issues that he finds interesting and which cause him to sit back and think. Cryptocurrency, true crime, natural law, the occult. No topic is off limits here. He has always enjoyed when people give their points of view or thoughts on different topics that they have researched. And what makes it all great is that it's their unique take on what is being discussed. For that reason alone, it makes it interesting to him. So take that walk down to his crypt. Make yourself comfortable. And just maybe he will be discussing a topic that you have been thinking about. Here's your host, Crypt Rick.
Welcome, everybody. What is it? It is Monday, and that can mean only one thing. It is time once again for Crypt Rick's I've Been Thinking. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, everybody in chat. I like to always include you guys, let you know that I am in chat, keeping an eye on it. So, hey, hello to everybody. Hopefully, everybody's doing great. Had a great weekend. And what is it? It is one day before Halloween. I am very excited to do this show. I've been telling you guys about this show. It's going to be a great one, and I'm finally happy that at least it falls on the day before Halloween. And it's very, very cool, guys. And I tell you, it's going to be a great show. This is going to be one. I wanted to keep it Halloween themed. I promised you guys I would, but with a little bit of a different spin on it. And I'm really looking forward to this discussion. I have two great guests that are joining me for this show. I wanted to make sure that we cover some great topics here, and it's going to be a really different spin on it. Like I said, I want to keep it on Halloween themed. It's very dear holiday to me for one reason. It's my anniversary. As you guys know, I'm married on Halloween. It'll be my 26th anniversary tomorrow, which is awesome. So Halloween, because I like the darker side of things, as people say or seem to think, Halloween has always been one of those holidays that, you know, I as a kid I loved, and I've loved through my whole life. But let's get into what it really, let's go a little deeper than just the surface of what people think Halloween is. And that is why I got some great guests lined up here to talk about this. It's going to be a great one. Let me tell you, vampires, zombies, werewolves. Oh my, it's going to be awesome. So I'm just going to go ahead. I always let you guys know at the beginning, I want to make sure I get lots of time with my guests. So I'm not going to babble too much here like I've already done. Just remember, guys, please, Revolution Radio is listener supported. So important. You guys keep us here doing our shows every day of the week. We would not be here without your guys' generosity and donations, and that is the truth of the matter. And I will make sure I let you guys know how important you guys are every time I'm on here through your generosity. So please, if you can, head over to revolution.radio, the donation section at the top. There's so many ways you can donate. There's snail mail. There's, if you like cryptocurrency, there's Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum. There's Patreon if you want to do it that way. So we have you covered. Direct pay. They got you covered every way, guys. So please, if you can donate, no donation is too big, too little. It all adds up. Keeps freedom of speech alive, which it is here at Revolution Radio for sure. And that is important. And it's something that we have to fight for. I say that every week because we are losing the ability to get the truth out there very easily at a minimum. Sometimes it's almost impossible. They're just really clamping down on other platforms. So that is why I cherish this so much, because here anything can be discussed, any topic, no limits. And that, for me, guys, especially now, is worth fighting for. So please, if you can, donate. And that is all I need to say about that. With that out of the way, I want to go ahead and bring in my first guest. I've had him on the show before, and I had to get him in for this one because I knew he was the man to break this down, this holiday season down, Halloween, what it's all about. Mr. Will Keller from the One Great Work Network. How are you doing, Will? I'm excited to have you here, as you can tell.
Thank you, my brother. It's a pleasure to be back on. I love coming on and having great discussions with you, and I'm looking forward to this one. And happy anniversary, man. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. And that's what I was saying. It's like I struggle with this, believe it or not, as I get older, because you grow. And I got married on Halloween. It's always been one of my favorite holidays. Same with my wife. And then, I like it for the reasons most people like it. I like it's just my time of year. I like the whole imagery. I like all of this stuff. As people know, I mean, look at my name. It's no secret that I like the darker side of things in ways. If that's the way you want to look at it, I don't see it the darker side. I just kind of see it as it's what I like. But I do struggle with it because there is a deeper meaning to this holiday and to Halloween. and I want you to break it down so we can start. You got a great set of points that you want to hit on, and this is really going to build. Like we can start right at the beginning, and what. So let's break down. Well, what is Halloween and its origins?
Excellent. Yeah, no, this is a great time period. It's my daughter's favorite holiday. I love this holiday as well. And I think we might want to just quickly touch on, just lay the foundations of what most people in the world think Halloween is, right? When
Mm-hmm.
you say Halloween, people think of ghouls, ghosts, vampires, dressing up in costumes, going to parties, trick-or-treating with candy, all this kind of stuff, right? Carving pumpkins. But I mean, that's as far as most people, their knowledge base goes when
Right.
it comes to this holiday. So this all holidays that we experience in culture are rooted deep within our ancestral knowledge, that's very much intertwined with the natural world and nature. So I think it's important to have that knowledge and that wisdom to understand it for ourselves and apply to the real world, and educate our children on this as well, so they can pass it through the generations. This knowledge is valuable, and it can be used, and it also can be forgotten, like it has in the majority of the world, right? This is the exoteric, the outer ring. Most people think Halloween is kind of this silly, fun, holiday where we eat
Right.
candy, drink some booze, go to parties, etc.
Yep.
But there's far more deeper meaning and truth behind this holiday. So, let's start with the origins of Halloween, and I'm going to run through some of this lists that we're going to go deeper and deeper and deeper as we go.
Okay.
So the most, I would say, somewhat common that people understand is the Celtic festival of Samhain, Samhain, pronounced Samhain. This is a Gaelic tradition, right, from the ancient Druids as well. And Halloween's roots can be found in the Celtic festival of Samhain, which has been celebrated around October 31st. It marks the end of the harvest season. So this is really important. We understand that nature is cyclical. There are cycles in nature. We call them the seasons. So as we're moving away from summer, and now we're getting into fall, and then we will be moving into winter, the time period of the autumn equinox to the winter solstice, this is this time period of Halloween. So it's the end of the harvest. We've harvested everything that we needed in fall and the end of summer, and now we're heading into the season of winter, which in our ancestors, mainly two seasons were recognized. You had spring and winter, and they called these the season of life, which is spring, and the season of death, which is winter. Now, if you can imagine the ancient peoples, our ancestors, which I call them animists. That's the term animist means to be animated. Animists are indigenous and even modern peoples that hold a worldview where they perceive nature and they observe nature how it is and its inner workings and how that corresponds to the human being and to all life on the planet. So our ancestors observed nature on a daily basis. This was very much their way of life. So when they see these two seasons, winter being cold, harsh, very hard to produce food. Actually, you can't grow anything in certain climates and territories. So it was looked upon as the season of death. Season of death, as in everything in nature dies back, the crops, but also human beings die as well. It's cold, it's brutal. So this necessarily isn't a negative thing. Our ancestors, the animists, they recognize death as being as important as life. They're one and the same on opposite polarities. They're very much intertwined with existence and reality and nature. So this is very important. So, of course, they understand these cycles, and as the harvest season is ending, and the sun is actually the days, or I mean, excuse me, the nights are becoming longer and the days are becoming shorter. This is another sign of entering into the season of death or winter. So it's very fascinating that, the clock, the calendar is the sky, is nature itself. So they're able to really pinpoint the accuracy of these of this time period. So yeah, it was celebrated. So Samhain being the Gaelic tradition, a Celtic festival that the ancient Druids celebrated.
Right. And what's kind of fascinating, Will, is that I'm just thinking as you're speaking, many things actually, because it's really interesting what you're saying. That's why I'm really honing in on it. But you think of it like they do celebrate, and a lot of people, they realize people think of spring, and everybody really celebrates that. It's the time, when things are warming up and the season's getting better, and the time of growing and that. But it's also fascinating to me how they celebrate the darker part. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like the end of it. Like it's just as important as the spring. Like they're very important, and I'm not sure how to word it. I hope I'm doing a good job, but it's just fascinating to me that that it's a celebration. But it's you know what I mean. It's really interesting how there's that balance.
Yeah, the word that I was struggling to pull out was to venerate. Veneration. It's not like celebration. I mean, it's more about respect, having a deep respect for something, wisdom, an event that's usually based in the natural world, and you respect that. Of course, there was also celebration is attached to that as well, and also gratitude and acceptance, etc. So that's what the ancient peoples did. They venerated this time period. They venerated nature. So, also other influences are there was the Roman influence. So the Romans, when they conquered the Celtic territories and, committed, let's not mince words here. They, the genocide of many indigenous peoples like the Druids. They incorporated, because they conquered these territories, they took the people as well, right? So now the people are held under duress and in slavery, but because there were so many animist and pagan, let's just clear this up. Pagan, it means someone that is an animist, someone that is outside of the Abrahamic traditions of the cultural religions. It's not a negative word. It literally means country dweller. But because the people were of pagan descent, meaning that they did not follow what the Romans believed, and the Romans were also pagan. They were outside of the Abrahamic religions at a certain time period. During that time period, that the Romans, being very intellectual and being great, the strategies that they came up with were, amazing. They decided to incorporate some of the indigenous cultures and traditions into their culture to make it easier for people to conform. Really
interesting.
It's extremely important, and they did that many times. I mean, this is another story, but this leads into Christianity as well. But so the Roman influence, they took they took Samhain and incorporated those traditions into Feralia. It's a Roman holiday to honor the dead, and Panoma. It's a festival celebrating the goddess of fruit and trees, and it also believed to have influence from Samhain. And then, of course, there was the Christian influence. So in the 8th century, Pope Gregory III designated November 1st as All Saints' Day. Right. All Saints' Day is still celebrated today. It's also known as All Hallows' Day, right? And Halloween, as we know it in modern culture, All Hallows Eve is October 31st, so it is the eve of All Hallows Day, or All Saints Day, November 1st. So that's to honor all the saints and the martyrs in their culture and tradition, right?
Yeah. Wow.
So it's important. And after I kind of go through this list, I'm also going to add on to this and kind of tie this all together, which I think is extremely fascinating.
It really is.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like it's just, and as we're talking about nature too, I always think of this, Will, is how disconnected people are becoming from nature. I understand technology and people, but it's got its good and its bad. And I always say that one of the bad things about us, in this technology age, is that we are losing this connection to nature. Even around where I live, there's not many people outside much. They might walk their dog, and that's about the most outside they get. I try in the summer to be out as much. I'm out all day. I want to be in nature. I want to be connected, but we're losing that. There's a price to pay for where we're going if we're not careful. Is what I'm trying to get out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you understand what nature is, right? Even the word nature means creation, means creator. So, and that nature comes from the Cometian tradition, pronounced netcher, spelled NTR. And that meant creator, right? And also creation, one and the same. Natural means of, like, from, or related to nature, creation. So when we look at the natural world, it is non-man-made. Human beings did not create the natural world. We are part of it. Right. So yes, absolutely. Nature is creation, and understanding, Rick, you being a student of natural law, the laws of nature, we understand that there are these laws. Nature is perfect order. It operates it's a system that is intertwined with everything, including ourselves. So if we, as human beings, if we want to have a mentor, if we want to look to something where we can model our own systems and structures in society, we need to look no further than nature herself, right? She shows us everything. There's nothing wasted. Everything is incorporated and utilized. And it's a beautiful thing. Here's an example, since we're talking about Halloween, right? The calendar. The Gregorian calendar that we all know with 12 months of the year, this is an artificial system created by the Romans, right? It's not actually based. It's very much off of the natural world. Our days and the months have, some have 28, some have 30, some have 31, right? The days of the week all come from astrological symbols, right? Monday, Moon Day. Saturday, Saturn's day, Sunday is the sun. I mean, it comes from the Roman tradition. This is where we get these words. But actually, there used to be 13 months because there's 13 cycles of the moon in a year. And there's 20. Think about this. There's 28 days for a waxing and a waning cycle of the moon. So that means one moon month is 28 days. You take those extra days, right? And that equates to another 28 days of the 13th month. So even the calendar is off. It's artificial. And
that's crazy that you broke that down. That's interesting. Sorry, I had to say that. That is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So, I mean, if you look at it, 7 days in a week, we can keep those Monday or Sunday to Monday, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. But the months itself, there should be 13 months of 28 days. This would be the natural cycle of the moon, it's easy to understand what a year is if you're observing nature, right? You have spring, winter, spring again, bam, you've just lived a year. And days are easy. Sun comes up, sun goes down, rises, it sets. Months are easy as well, but you incorporate that with the moon itself. the waxing and waning, and it's 28-day cycle. So the reason for this, having even the calendar off, this artificial system, is that it's just another example of how human beings are disconnected from the natural world, from the rhythm of life, the rhythm of creation. If we are disconnected to the rhythm of life, the rhythm of nature, we're disconnected from ourselves as well.
Agreed. That's so yeah, and people, that was my point too. And then you said it perfect, Will, is that people are getting disconnected, and it's getting up. It's very noticeable when you see it. Like I think a lot of people are so distracted they don't see it. But even when I was growing up, people were just out more. They were doing more things outside. It was like the whole neighborhood I grew up in was a bustle with people. Like they were all out doing things. They were out in the yard. They were taking hikes in the woods, and they were just really, I think they were very connected. And I just see that this we're starting to see the price, as I was saying, of people disconnecting from nature. And I learned so much, as you were saying perfectly, is that I learned so much from observing nature. And I just wonder how many people actually sit back and even take the time to observe the nature outside and then the nature within themselves. There's this big disconnect that it's getting bigger as time goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I myself and my brother Logan, we stress the animistic perspective, the worldview, because this is what it's based in. It's based in observation, which equates to self-knowledge, right? You are observing nature. You're also observing yourself and the correspondences, and you're accumulating knowledge. Because like I said earlier, who's the greatest mentor? Nature.
Agreed.
Right, the laws of nature, so we can learn a great deal amount. So when we look at these holidays like Halloween, right, the origins of Halloween, and most of these holidays have been around for thousands and thousands of years, way longer than what even the mainstream says, because it's based in a time period of nature itself that has always existed.
Right. Very, very true.
Yeah, observing this and having this knowledge of nature and ourselves is absolutely priceless, right? And it's
I think it is
valuable.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm glad because I'm so happy because we actually have another great guest that's going to be joining us. I'm so happy you can make it. Logan Hart. We are diving, as you know Will Keller and you know me. So, hey, welcome to the show. And we are diving into Halloween, its origins, and animism. So this is a perfect spot to introduce you, Logan. Welcome, and get your thoughts on this whole topic of Halloween, its origins, and then diving into animism, what it is. Maybe some people listening have never even heard this word, so maybe we can kind of dive into this. You and Will can kind of dive into this and educate people what it is, because it's a word I think many people probably have never even heard of. So,
hey, Crypt Rick and Will, welcome, and everyone listening in. Can y'all hear me okay?
Perfect.
Excellent.
What's up, brother?
So, yeah, better late than never. Yeah.
I'm so happy you're here. Thank you, Logan.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, great topic. Really excited to get into this. Will's very well versed in these things as well. He and I talk a lot about these topics, especially animism and like Will was just talking about, the importance of being connected with nature. You hear this a lot. It's almost like this kind of like cliche Hallmark card kind of, connect with nature. But what does that truly mean? It's first and foremost, I would say, recognizing that you are nature. So even connecting with nature implies a separateness, right? You're this and you're connecting with that, but really it's the recognition that there is no separation, and then you start to live your life according to that. As you were just saying, Will, synchronizing with the cycles of nature. This is a really huge thing that we've been really cut off from.
Agreed.
As far as, this is the principle, the Hermetic principle of rhythm. All things are in motion. Everything is moving, changing, in constant flux. And we can observe these patterns and cycles in nature, such as the changing of the seasons, and not just one season to the next, but recognizing each season for what they are, what they represent allegorically throughout life, not just, oh, the trees are turning brown. You're looking at the bigger picture of life and death, right? Things like this, and that's partially getting into the psychology of Halloween, and it really largely started around a focus on death, the afterlife, and the thinning of the veil. I'm not sure what all you guys have gotten into already, but I'm excited to get into some of the historical roots and the development, because I think that's important too, is not just where it all started, but it didn't just, Halloween looked totally different. It wasn't called that. The practices were very different. So really, I think it's important to note that the Halloween that we have today is a very long process of cultural blending and changing and melding into what it has become.
That we did kind of Will kind of dove into that at the beginning, Logan, perfectly, and I would love to get your thoughts too, because I'd like to dive into this deeper because we got time here, and I want to make the best of our time to really break down Halloween. How many people think about Halloween, where it came from, and you guys, both of you, bring up great points that how ancient this holiday is. I think a lot of people just think it's always been trick or treating and doing these things, and I've known, that it has its origins in paganism and goes so much further back, and it's been morphed, as Will was saying. It's changed over time. Everybody's kind of added their own little ingredient to it, and it's become what it is now, which I mean, I can't wait to get into that topic of what they've changed it into. But yeah, if you want to get into that, Logan, and just give us your thoughts on how it's changed and where it started. I think a lot of people need to know, like Will was breaking down, where it started.
Yeah. Well, first of all, looking at Halloween as what it is now, it's typically there's just a few things that you think of: the dressing up, the candy, the pumpkin carving, and things like that. Most of that stuff really has only been around for not even 100 years. To my knowledge and with my research, it was the popularization of the horror movie genre starting around the 1950s is really when a lot of that stuff started, coming about. I mean, you could say it started kind of, with the Victorian literature, such as Frankenstein, Dracula. Those were kind of the planting of the seeds. But the horror movie culture is what I think was the biggest kind of what made the culture around Halloween what it is, like in its most modern form. It's actually not very old at all, but the date itself is the oldest part. That's what you can really trace back, for thousands of years and probably beyond. Like Will was saying, the the synchronization of our lives and creating rituals and festivals around the significant dates of nature is as old as human beings, really. I mean, it goes way back. So obviously, again, you're looking at the significance of the changing of the seasons, this idea that the veil was thinner. Halloween was a lot more than just that, though. That's what you might hear at if you do a quick, just read a quick little like pop culture internet article. It'll probably talk about those things, but the date of Samhain was a lot more than that. Really, it was a huge deal culturally. It wasn't just the festival. It was a harvest festival. First of all, we need to understand the significance of the harvest compared to now. We've got grocery stores. Food is so easy and abundant, but at the time, you broke your back for all year for that harvest. So it was a big deal having that bounty. And so there was a lot of food and drink was a big part of it. There was a giant bonfire, a feast. There were blood rituals and sacrifices happening. There was also trials going on where criminals would be, tried for their crimes, and often there was a death sentence associated with that, especially if the crime happened during the festival, which is I find pretty fascinating.
Me too. Wow.
But so just it was a culturally very significant event that was a lot more than just what people think of on its surface. It was a big deal, you know.
Wow, yeah, that's like you break. That's really fast. I'm really fascinated, guys. I really like diving deeper into this. I love when I can dig into things and kind of find and learn and understand where things come from. I've always been the why guy, like why things like this, why, and so you guys are breaking this down so perfectly. And I hope people are thinking about this now, like the origins of these holidays. And you make a great point, Logan, because I think you just gave me a perfect mental image of what it was like at this time of year when everybody, like you said, we have it so easy now. People, that if your crop failed, usually you died or the whole village could die. Like this was so important. So it made a lot of sense. I can see it, that you have a great harvest and then all the community comes together. It's a big community event. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of celebrating, because in a sense you're going to have an easier winter. It's tough enough, but at least you got food. You got,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, they're basically celebrating like, yay, we're not gonna die this year.
Wow,
Great
it's
job.
true. Yeah, exactly. What do you think? Well, like Logan's breaking it down. You guys are throwing some heat. I love it.
Yeah, Logan added you added some great points. I'm going to add. I'm going to go a little bit deeper and bring it to another level that I know Logan will agree with is the astrological time period. You know, people have to understand that when we hear of Samhain and these names, just like Logan said, right? The names have changed over the years. This time period was venerated all across the planet, from Peru to Australia. I mean, everywhere, thousands and thousands of years ago. The reason is, how do all these ancient traditions and cultures, celebrate the same time period at a very specific point, right? I mean, October 31st to early November. I mean, this was celebrated. There's lots of evidences of that. Well, as long as men have drawn breath and had two eyes, they've looked to the stars. The stars is the sky clock. It tells us time. It tells us a story. It tells us our history, all kinds of stuff. And if we go back 5, 6, 7,000 years ago, right, we can see this now too, that the Pleiades would rise at about midnight on the 31st of October, and it rises onto the shoulder of the bull of Taurus, the constellation. And there's many depictions and evidence of the drawing of the Pleiades, the constellation, on the shoulder of Taurus, the bull. There was many sacrifices for the bull as well. That was a big part of the tradition, which all the traditions around the world share the same sacrifice of the bull to venerate the constellation of Taurus for the Pleiades. But there's also something very interesting that happens. I think it's every 7 or 8 years. It is the Taurid meteor shower. Now, if we go back, and again, I'm pulling knowledge from a great researcher, Randall Carlson.
Right.
And I'm so highly recommend people look into his work. And also, there's another a researcher and author from the mid 1800s, Robert Grant Halliburton. He touches on this a lot as well. That back in the day, there was the deluge, which was a great global catastrophe. With we talk about flood, where a comet crashed into the earth. Now, it was during this same time period that we are in right now. And as we pass through the Taurid meteor shower, we can see that it comes from, it looks like it's coming right out of the Pleiades constellation in Taurus, the constellation. That's where it would look like. So there's this ancestral experience that has been passed down as well through all the cultures of the world during a great catastrophe of the planet, where they would venerate this time period for many reasons. One of them being, to appease the macro, the cosmic forces, to not, hurt the planet, destroy the village, destroy the planet itself. because of the asteroid, the meteor shower that they would experience and they would see. So that's something that ties in a lot of ancient cultures all around the world. Again, it's vast information that, you could spend hours and hours diving into that. But I found it fascinating, and it's a really good correspondence with a lot of these traditions.
Absolutely.
So there's always the micro and the macro, right? So I mean, yeah, you could look at, and this is across the board. You can almost look at as the micro being the seasons on the planet, the macro being the cosmic weather of the constellations and the seasons that we experience, right? The equinox, etc., the solstice, eclipses, all of those macro cosmology.
Right.
So it's fascinating.
It really is, and you make a great point, Will, because the more I research and you get into ancient history and you start diving in, you really quickly realize that the ancients were master sky watchers. Like their monuments, everything was so geared around that. They really knew the sky and understood it and what it meant. And this is another thing I could even touch on, is that we're losing connection with that. I mean, so many people got their heads in their phones and stuff. I don't even know if people look up anymore, kind of thing. Like, how many people are really observing the sky? I just keep coming back to this disconnect that they're really doing a number on breaking us from everything that, like, nature and from the sky. And it's very disturbing, like, is a good word for me to put it, that what they're doing, this connection that we're losing.
I would add on this topic, especially, when I first tuned in, I heard y'all talking about the dates, and I was thinking about the Gregorian calendar and how it's not truly synchronized with nature. It's a false time system. And then also these holidays, these holy days, they're still based on the significant dates, but they are just vestiges left over from the time when people did have a deep, intimate understanding and connection with what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a placeholder. It stands as a proxy for something we understand on a deep psychological, like subconscious level, because we've been practicing these things for tens of thousands of years and beyond. We know, we're not conscious of it. So we're practicing these things without not having any conscious knowledge of what we're actually participating in. And that's what I think is what they're there for, is to kind of usurp and direct the energy around these dates. And of course, the ones that the social engineers and such, they are harvesting the energy and the the millions of dollars people spend. I heard a statistic, I don't know how realistic it is, but there was like 10 or 20 billion dollars a year just spent on Halloween. And most of it is freaking plastic decorative crap from China and corn syrup candy, like just sugar with food coloring and stuff. Like, man, think of all that money wasted on just for what? I mean, and they people just throw their decorations away and probably buy all new shit the next year. Just keep. I mean, Christmas isn't much better, but just looking at this one Halloween. So best believe they're cashing in on this, but yet the people participating, they're not really getting a lot of spiritual, if any, spiritual benefit from something that should be deeply spiritual.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I don't think many people think Halloween is spiritual in any way anymore. I think it's exactly
Especially
what you
the
said.
Christians.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they've done and they've done a great job. I was just going to say, Logan, that, and get your thoughts too, Will, is that would it be fair for me to say that they've cheapened it, for a lack of a better word? Like, they've taken this, it's a very important time of year. It's a very important time to celebrate, but they've cheapened it. They've turned it into this, they've morphed it into this thing that we see before us that has nothing really
100%.
based in what it is.
Yeah, there's definitely it's been usurped is a good word that I like to say, and then that has been programmed and conditioned culturally over time. Where, I mean, Logan, what you said, I mean, absolutely, hands down, was perfect. And this is something that, we need to recognize as animists, viewing everything as levels of consciousness and energy. People are participating in a ritual, right? I mean, the modern participation of Halloween with the crap candy, and dressing up, and even events during this time as well. I mean, the social engineers, the parasite class, are siphoning people's louche energy, their life force energy. So it's either, are you aware of it or not? And what are you doing about it? Like, what is your energy? What's the context of your energy during this time period? And there's many time periods that need to kind of have this type of awareness looked at, like the season of sacrifice, right? That's another one that needs to be talked about. Even Christmas as well. So there's that initial usurpage that happened, just like the Romans, casting genocide on the Druids and the Celtic traditions, but then taking their festivals and their veneration, celebratory holidays, and incorporating them into their culture. So you see that this blending, and then over time, again, if you're not talking about it, then you're losing it. So the knowledge becomes twisted, it becomes lost. People ignore it, they forget, they don't pass it down, etc., etc.
Great point.
Even though it's always there and available, because nature is always present.
That's a great point, Will. If we don't discuss it and bring it forward, you lose it. And I mean, I would venture to say that if you go out into the world and ask people the true origins of Halloween and what it means, they couldn't tell you. I'm pretty confident that I would get a pretty standard answer of what it is, and that's because we've lost the connection. And you bring up a great point. I'm looking at the time. I'm trying, because I always seem to do this, guys. Forgive me. I always hit on an important topic right before break time, it seems. But we got about 10, 12 minutes to break this down. But you bring up a great point. You brought up season of sacrifice, Will, and I want to hear your thoughts on this too, Logan, because we're talking about the siphon of energy that they're doing on people. And we've all heard of this, that this is the time where a lot of rituals in the occult world, and what I guess I could call them the master dark psychologists, the people that run the show, are doing a lot of sacrificing. Now, do you think this is important at this time of year? How important is it, Will and Logan, to this? Like, are they like, what is going on? This energy sacrifice.
Well, the season of sacrifice is in the spring, starting around May 1st.
Okay.
I would call this the season of harvest.
Mm-hmm.
And
better. Okay.
And that's what I was going to get at. Is, first of all, this is what you get time and time again when you look back through history and you try to look at the roots of anything, especially remotely spiritual, however you want to word that, is it all traces back to pagan or animistic cultures. That was the default spirituality of all cultures around the world, unanimously. They had their own ideas, their own names, their own versions of everything, but there's syncretistic ideas and concepts all throughout. And that's how you know there's an element of truth, because nature is the common theme. It's all based on nature, which is reality. And reality is singular. We're all living in it, right? And that's kind of the beautiful thing, is different cultures live in different parts of the world, right? Different climates, things like that. So there is that little bit of individuation, because nature kind of does change in some ways based on geographic location, but then there's also these universal elements to nature as well. And those are the things you'll really find are kind of the cornerstones and bedrocks of all these ancient practices. But as I was saying, time and time again, when you start looking into these historical origins of anything, the story is always the same. Is at a certain point, the Catholic Church came in, they usurped or co-opted or hijacked all of these holidays, these rituals, these concepts and names and deities and everything, and rebranded it. They tore all the old stuff down, all the relics and and monuments and statues and things like that, temples, whatever, and built their shit right on top of it. It's just so disrespectful, and it's horrible, that this is what happened, and culture was severed. That connection from nature was severed through that process. But last point I want to make to kind of tie this together is that that's an unfortunate aspect of history, but the beautiful part about it is we can still come to understand these things ourselves and practice in our own individual kind of ways. So taking it back to this idea of the season of harvest is like, you don't have to go and do this big ritual. You don't have to go to some event or social gathering or whatever. What I do personally as a modern day practicing pagan is I just align my mentality towards what's happening energetically. You can do whatever, and your mind can be sporadic all over the place, if that makes sense, but you can choose to set your tone and your mindset to kind of synchronize with these processes. So right now is the time to cash in on what you've been working on the whole year, right? And prepare for the winter, which is signifying death. It's the weather is cold. You spend more time inside. Think about what that means even in a modern day where weather is not quite as impactful on your day-to-day life. But typically people, when winter comes, what do? You want to read more books, or just kind of do more indoor kind of activities, as opposed to going out and planting and whatever that may be. So that's what I'm saying is, like, you can do whatever you want, but I think there's a lot of power and value in synchronizing your life, both externally and internally or mentally, with these cycles and preparing yourself. So like, I'm preparing for the winter mentally, not just the weather is cold, but ready, for certain things to die. That death and rebirth cycle is so important to embrace. Parts of yourself are going to die, and you want to let that go. Relationships that are no longer in alignment with you are going to die, and so just
Absolutely.
embracing that. And then when you've, because that death, it's like the order out of chaos. You lean into that, you embrace it. And then when everything that should die has died, then you've got a clear place, and now you have all this compost that's going to fertilize the soil for the next cycle to begin. And then you start planting again. So this isn't just about literal harvest and planting, like agriculture. Everything from a pagan mindset is allegorical and very spiritual. So that would be the time where you start some new projects, right, during the planting time. And then harvest comes. You harvest, you reap the benefits, you clear away all that has overgrown or is just not serving. And so you have a clean space to start it all over again.
Logan, that is amazing. You pulled what I was thinking out of my head. I can't even say how perfect. As you were speaking, I was at the point I was going to make when you were done is I'm looking at this time of year as a death of the old you, if you know what I mean. Like, you take this time and you said it perfect, way better than I'm going to say it, but I get what you're saying, is that take this time of year to go and do the internal work and really do the cleaning and the work on yourself, and then it's a form of death, the old you, and then you become out reborn. That's where my mind was going but you said it perfect. So Will, I like you to
before
comment.
Will jumps in, I want to add one thing, because I really think it's just a beautiful thing to think about too. Again, looking at things always with the dualistic, the literal and the allegorical. That is where you really unlock so much of your consciousness and the spiritual aspects to even the most mundane things. Remember also that this Halloween time, was a time to remember the dead, to honor the dead. And even when it was co-opted by the Catholics and became All Hallows Eve, that's what it was, I mean, they kind of did away with a lot of the pagan aspects and made it a lot more about honoring the dead, praying for those in purgatory, whatever. That applies as well, is looking at honoring the parts of yourself and your life that are dying or dead, and even showing gratitude for that. Because think about it, everything is a stepping stone. So even the parts that were your lower self, right? Even your addictions, for example, or vices or things, like, even though they're not ideal, they're still serving a purpose. And say when you're ready to let something go, like an addiction or something like that, it's important to always have that gratitude and thank that aspect of you for kind of serving its purpose and moving you towards that better place.
Great point. Yeah, some of the hardest, darkest times in my life is when I've done the most growing. It seems is when I've really, like, when I've leaned into that part of my life. It seems that great growth comes out of it. There's a big aha moment and a growth period afterwards. So great point, Logan. What do you want to? Will, I got to get your thoughts if you want to add on to what Logan's saying.
Yeah, no, I'll add something real quick before break. Logan, that was fantastic.
Absolutely.
This time period, and I'll put in some practical attributes that I applied too, right? I mean, the winter time, you spend more time inside, like internally within yourself, reflecting on the year. This is the time of harvest where you're reaping what you have sown throughout the year. And then when you go into winter, right, you have that internal reflection and you recuperate. Just as the sun dips down and we have long nights, shorter days, this is what the soul does as well to get ready on the other side to, be reborn, to rise again, and to actually then the season of sacrifice begins, because now you're coming outside more. You're putting your energy into new projects, the new you, working on yourself, and sowing all the new ideas and great things that you want to do. So this is a great time. Some of the applications that I use, it's as simple as my daughter and I going out on a hike and just being in nature and just and realizing and being aware of this time period of what's going on, the time period of change, and just being grateful for that. So yeah.
Wow, yeah, great points. And it always seems to come back to that, Will and Logan, that it's this work internally. And a lot of people, I keep saying it, I think that's the foundation most people are missing, is that they know everything that's going on externally, but the one place they do not ever want to look is internally. And I think, and I get it, it's tough and it's not fun at times, and it takes it's work. It really is
both.
work.
It's both, really. It's definitely both, for sure.
I love the points you made, Will, and what it brought up for me too is that going internal and that reflecting is like taking it back to this idea of the harvest. Is what's the other thing that you do when you've harvested everything? You get it all inside, and then what do you have to do? You take inventory. You're like, okay, where am I at? What do I have?
Right.
Where am I lacking? And then that is going to give you the information that you need for when the next planting cycle comes, where you're going to direct your energy and your focus into.
Yeah,
is like, this was very productive. This was very bountiful. But over here now, I can see I need to really, up my game in this part. And that's why, it's so important it's the one time of the year to really take stock, take inventory, and reflect on where you're at so that you can know where you're about to go next.
That's a great point. It is taking stock, taking inventory of where you're at is it's just a perfect way to describe it, Logan. It really is. And it's so important. I just wonder how many people actually do take the time to sit and do what you're speaking about, like to really examine everything in their life and to work on it and then get rid of what they don't need. That's so key. It's just a really I can't ever stress it enough. And I know it's like a broken record to a lot of people listening, but it's just because I know it's that important. It was that is what changed my life so drastically, was doing the work on myself, which I do every day. I'm a work in progress. So, it doesn't happen overnight, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
Wow. Hey, there we go. You guys are right in sync. Look at that. But yeah, I think we got like 2 minutes. So I'm excited, guys, for hour two. I'm really excited for hour two to get into, and because Will's got some great things we want to touch on it, like Halloween and its modern world. Like I'm just thinking of we kind of did dive into this about the corporations and the movies, but maybe get into that a little bit more and like what they've done to it. And then relating, I want to get into modern day vampires and stuff. And what I mean by that, guys, is energy vampires. And then you can even look at zombies. How many people, when you look at society, it's like a zombie society almost. So there's some great correlations I think we can get into in hour two for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll look at some of these, like Logan said about the Hollywood industry, the movie industry, and in cahoots with the candy corporations, right? But they've taken these concepts, these stories of vampires, werewolves, fairies, witches, etc. They've taken these from some of them very ancient cultures. Mm-hmm. So, and then they've utilized them. So we're going to talk about the correspondences to actually what it, comparing it to human psychology.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. I really do. I think that you can really kind of draw a line between it. And it's something that I've said many times about energy vampires. I know I got some around me in my real life, and it's noticeable, mm-hmm. like this energy feeding that they do. So I think it's a great aspect of the show that we can do, is kind of like what you said, Will, is kind of looking at both and seeing how the old stories are affecting us now. So we will be back, guys. We got Will Keller, Logan Hart. Stick around. Hour two coming up in like 3 or 4 minutes, guys.
All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Welcome back, everybody. We are already here, hour two. The first hour, once again, I always say flies by, and I sometimes wish, guys, I had 3-hour shows, because it seems when we just start getting into the good stuff, the show's over. So thank you guys so much for being here and being part of the show. I can't thank you enough, Will. I can't thank you enough, Logan. As I was saying at the beginning of the show, I've been looking forward to this one for like a month now. So it really is a show that I'm excited to be doing. And I think a lot of people are going to learn so much from this. We're talking about Halloween, its origins, and where it is at now. And Will, let's get into Halloween and the modern world. And I think we should start with the corporations, because Logan brought up a great point. How much they're making. I never thought of it this way, actually, until Logan brought it up. Like, how much money are corporations raking in to this time of year? It's the number is staggering. Even if it's not exactly what Logan said, even half of that is staggering.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't actually have exact numbers, but millions of dollars.
Wow,
for sure. Absolutely.
Jeez, yeah, it's just crazy to think like the money that, and then not to mention, and then once again, I think, Will, is that, we get in like talking about the candy, and then we know what that does to people. It's not healthy in any shape or form. And then, it's just this whole business wrapped around, it just keeps growing when you start looking at it. Like, you get at that aspect of it, and then what happens to people's health, and it can't be good for you. This stuff that kids are dumping into their body, and they've made such a big a deal out of it with their trick-or-treating and stuff. They've really got their mitts into this and corrupting it.
Well, yeah, I think most people can recognize nowadays that the commercialization and popular culture go hand in hand. It's like when one holiday ends, literally the day after, they already have stuff in the stores for the next holiday, and it might be a couple months away, right? So it's just this conveyor belt, this carousel of materialism, and it's it can be pretty disgusting, and hey, you can have some fun with it, et cetera, but the ignorance. I mean, there's a rhyme and a reason for these time periods and why the social engineers are doing what they do. We touched on it, about the manipulation and the control of energy, right? I mean, there's a reason why there's wars going on right now at this time period. There will be a reason why there are false flag events or certain psychological operations when it comes to late March, April, and May during the season of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 5-6 months from now. So there's a reason for everything. There's a certain energy on the planet, in the morphogenic field, in the ether, on the macro level, and we are very much incorporated in these frequencies. We are tapped in. The question is, are you tuned in? They want people to be out of alignment, not attuned to the natural frequencies of what's going on the planet. Because if you're out of balance, if you're disconnected, then that will have an effect on your psychology, your emotional stability, your physical vessel, and just how you operate in the natural world. So it's very important to the social engineers that they utilize culture and materialism a certain way to capitalize on energy, on
Right.
the true currency of individuals. And that can be as simple as distractions.
No, that's a great point. And what they do, Will, is it's, as you're saying, it's they just give it a little nudge. It seems like that's all it takes to get people off the energy and the frequency of what we're talking about. It's just this little nudge kind of, and then it kind of throws everything off balance. Is the way I see it. And talking about this time of year especially, and what they've turned it into. It's just over time they just keep nudging, adding a little bit of their spin to it, and we're at now, and so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I will say this to give it a little historical aspect. So, in the medieval era and the Victorian, and even the Renaissance, this Halloween is where we start seeing kind of costumes come into play in more of like a modern tradition. And then after that, you have through Irish and Scottish immigration into Canada, United States. In the 19th century, we start to see like a blending of various traditions around this time period, which costumes and festivities kind of changed. But like Logan said, it wasn't really till recently, late 20th century, 21st century, when or the 20th century is when the commercialized aspect of costumes and decorations and candy really became popular in correspondence to literature, television, all these film, etc. So
Right,
they
right.
really go hand in hand.
Right. And Logan, back, I just wanted to ask you, Logan, with the whole, because we're talking about costumes back in when we're talking about the pagan, back in the days when they were celebrating, was it a time that they dressed up? Like, I'm picturing them dressing up as in like nature, like animals and stuff like that. Am I totally off? Because I really don't know, and I'm curious. Oh,
Oh,
Logan.
he's muted.
Oh, he could be busy. Oh, okay, well, then I'll get his
That's okay.
thoughts. What do you think, Will?
I can
Oh, here
answer
we
that.
go.
Oh,
There we
he's
go.
back.
I was
Okay.
yeah. I was yeah, you're absolutely on point with that, and it was in fact animals as well as monsters. And as far as my knowledge, the reason for this is it was part of a sort of protection against the evil spirits, so to speak, from kidnapping or attacking them and the children and stuff like that. That's what it was, is kind of this idea of like, be scarier than the monsters are. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Absolutely.
they're actually, that I would say that's one of the very few things that has remained fairly intact culturally all the way up to the modern day. But Will, I'm glad you brought up the aspect of Irish immigration, because that from my research is where so there was a lot of Irish pranksters that would be active on the Halloween holiday, and that's where you get trick or treat from.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah,
Very cool.
there's your trick, right?
That's
But
interesting.
yeah, and that was a great point as well about the energy, right? The harvest of, because it is the season of harvest, right? But who, or like I should say, what or who is being harvested? Well, the masses, the ignorant masses, and so utilize, yes, and of course monetize. And a quick Google search right here, and looking, just kind of skimming multiple different hits, it does seem to be between $9 and $12 billion a year just in America alone, which is pretty mind-blowing.
That is.
Because the holiday is celebrated in pretty much every English-speaking country, and at this point it's starting to spread to other countries such as Japan and other places like that. So that's pretty fascinating. But one thing that I wanted to add here, and this is kind of my own take on Halloween that I've never really heard anyone else talk about, at least personally. I'm sure somebody else has said this, but I think of it as sort of a purge moment. Are you familiar with The Purge, like the TV show?
Yes. Yes.
So it's this idea that once a year, everybody's allowed to kind of let all their dark side out, right?
Mhm.
Because we repress it so much, and the worst things get, the depression, suicide. Like, there's clearly a lot of mental issues going on in the world.
That's true.
And so people just stuff it down, and these monsters are growing, right? Because as we know, ignorance or ignorance doesn't fix the problem. In fact, it typically makes it worse, especially when it comes to the subconscious and unconscious mind. The more you ignore something, the louder and bigger it becomes, because it's trying to get your attention, your awareness. So this is why I think Halloween has become, I mean, ask any normie. They're like, what's most people's favorite holiday? For a large part, it's Halloween. And why is that? Because that's the one time of year that it becomes socially and culturally acceptable to be spooky, to revel in the darkness and the gore and the terror and the fear.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Of course, they're the corporations and everybody to harvest and monetize that. But that's what I think it is it's an energetic letting kind of ritual, right? Letting is like bloodletting. It's like to allow to pass, or almost like you're opening the steam valve to let off some pressure that's brewing under the surface, because most people are like kind of ignoring and everything's fine and love and light, and especially the more Christian programs are running in the mind, it's very like, oh, we avoid the darkness, we don't acknowledge the darkness because that feeds it. And then you have this one day a year, or the season, it's not just the day, it's the build up to it, and people really just revel in that normality of getting to let their dark side out to play.
That's a great point, and you bring it. And I'm just thinking of the movie The Purge, because you just mentioned that, and I was just talking to somebody about this, and I'd love to get your guys' thoughts. Maybe I'm totally wrong, but I think I'm closer than I want to be. Is that if there was a day, if they did make this happen, I'm terrified. I think people would go. Am I crazy, or do you guys think that people would go along with this? If there was a purge where you could do whatever you want for one night, and that means kill anybody, murder anybody, do it, and just let that, like Logan's saying, with that energy out. Do you think people would go for this? I think we're almost there. Am I wrong, or just what do you think, guys? And if I am, tell me.
I think human beings are capable of doing whatever. This kind of brings up the question of human nature, right?
Right.
Are human beings, is their nature one of good or bad? And the correct answer is that we are programmable. So if you have a civilization, a society that's completely unconscious to self-knowledge and to the natural world and how, reality operates, they can easily be misguided, misdirected, and that ignorance for sure can program them to be a certain way. I mean, we look at our current condition right now. I would say the majority of human beings are more animalistic in their mentation, right? How they operate, they are operating from strictly the reptilian or the mammalian aspects of the brain and the body, right? Just this is where we see emotional reactiveness all the time, fight or flight, survival mode, me,
Aggression.
dog eat dog,
Aggression.
aggression. Absolutely. The true human characteristic is one of logic, reason, and holistic creativity, and to generate, to create. Temperance, exactly. These are human qualities that animals do not possess. This is what separates us. And obviously we can observe in the world that the majority of human beings do not have this state activated.
Right,
Very, very
right.
well said. And I would add too, when I think about, if it's an interesting thought experiment, Rick, I like that you brought this up. When I imagine what that would be like, the first thing that came to mind was it would be like a mass version of the Milgram experiment, because it would be
Right.
authority giving people to authorize violence. And it's like, well, we've been authorized by the authorities, then it's all fine. And mentally and morally, most people on some level have some infection of moral relativism. So because they're brainwashed to believe that authority does dictate right from wrong through religion and government primarily, and culture as well. So if it's culturally and government sanctioned, I absolutely think that not everyone would get behind it, but a disturbing amount of
I
people
agree.
would.
Yep.
And there's other reasons that I say that. There's some comments that I see on things like a police brutality video, for example, or the absolutely horrific and violent things that people say to women, of like, I hope someone are dash 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 you, things like just just absolutely savage. And yeah, they're just saying things, but again, if you take it that next step and authorize people to do things like that, I think not everyone would, but a lot of people would.
Right.
Especially when you consider just the overall violent, like, you've got shootings are happening more and more. There is a very violent nature brewing and brooding under the surface, and so giving it that sort of like official, pass,
Yeah.
or
That little nudge.
sanctioning.
It's that little nudge.
I think a lot of people would go for that.
Yeah. And
Because you
I
see that violence culture a lot online by just the things that people say, people rooting for, just more violence to happen, or they're the videos with that kind of stuff go more viral, things like that. That
just
is
go in the
indicative.
comment section. I was going to the comment section to read it. You get a good feel for where people are at by reading the comment section of these videos that we're talking about in other videos. You get it. It's a good gauge. And you're right. A lot of people are very aggressive, and so I keep worrying that that nudge. And I'm like you, Logan. I don't want a blanket statement saying that everybody would go purge happy, but it's there. The potential is there. Thoughts, Will?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with both you guys said. That's fantastic. Let's look at the word monster. The etymology of the word monster, right? It's monstrum, which is Latin, and it's a divine omen of abnormal human or animal characteristics. That's very telling, right? If you have a human being that does not have its human characteristics activated, and they they are obviously not animals, but their animalistic and reptilian characteristics are activated, and they are immoral in their actions. They are going against nature and the rhythm of life. This is it's abnormal, right? It's not in the flow. It's not in harmony. So that would be a monster.
That's a great point, because if you really, and this is a perfect segue into the topic that we wanted to get into, where we're actually kind of unpacking these archetypes, these mythologies of horror genre and that culture. That's one thing that you can really, like, it didn't really even occur to me until just now when you were saying that, is that's the one common theme that all of these monsters have, is that they're human-like, but they're melded with something different. So werewolf is a man wolf. That's what werewolf means, is man wolf. A vampire is a human that's been merged with like a vampire bat. That's a bloodsucker, a parasite. A zombie and a mummy are human, but they're dead, right? They're not imbued with spirit, with morality. So that's a really interesting, is like they're all kind of pointing at the same thing of they're human, yet they've been somehow corrupted or separated from their humanness or their humanity. They're not acting in alignment with that, but another a perversion of that in a way.
That's a great point.
It really is.
Kind of doing some research on these topics, I found that in most of the movies, right, the classical monster movies, horror movies, absolutely there was those two categories, right? The inhuman creatures that encounters humanity, and also humans that are created into monsters that are stripped from their humanity. And it seems like the allegory of the story, the human characteristic always prevails against its counterpart, which I find, that's obviously a positive, moral of the story, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
Great
Frankenstein point would be a great example of that as well, because it's like that whole story comes down to the question of like, what is human? Is it a mound of flesh that's been sewed together and shocked into animation? And does that creature have actual humanity? And then in the story, that's a big part of the themes of, the journey that the monster goes through is his own mortality and morality, because he's angry. He's angry of his own existence, and that no one treats him with kindness. Everyone just like sees a monster and they try to attack and kill him. And then he has the choice, right? Choice of what more human can you get than the ability to make conscious choices, not based of instinct, but of, logic and reason and empathy, is to not perpetuate that cycle, but choose to have compassion and to not become the monster that everyone thinks or says that he is.
Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Frankenstein has always been one that I was drawn to, and for all the reasons that you just said, Logan, just his struggle, and I think I'm probably gonna butcher the name, but I think it's Mary Shelley, the movie. Yep. And yeah, that one really resonated with me just because of the struggle. And you bring up great points, and I like you to add on to that, Will, because you see Frankenstein, he's pieced together, and I think of people being pieced together, especially now with so much influence coming into them. I'm just trying to kind of draw a line to it. Maybe I'm off, but I think
man-made.
He's man-made, right? And then, but his whole battle with just trying to figure things out and be accepted. So Frankenstein's always been one dear to me, just for the story of it. What do you think, Will?
Absolutely. And we're starting right here on Dr. Frankenstein and its monster. I do have a list that we can kind of start to go down after this. But yeah, I mean,
love it.
The creature can be viewed as the embodiment of the creator Right? So this is very much relevant to today with the materialistic scientism, human beings that are playing God and want to create. We could look at the transhumanistic agenda. They want to create in their own image as well. And this kind of resonates with the archetype of the Promethean figure as well, it's fascinating. I mean, how many people actually understand that Frankenstein isn't the monster, it's the doctor, right? Dr. Frankenstein
Exactly.
and his monster. So, and it's, the doctor's solution to Frankenstein was obviously to make the bride for the monster himself, which I find that fascinating. But yeah, no, it's good. So I definitely see Dr. Frankenstein very much as modern scientists in this day and age. Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The real villain, trying to play God, trying to play a creator.
I actually just thought of a different angle on this as well that you could consider is it could also represent the false religion, or say, Jehovah creating humans for not to be free to live their own lives however they wish, but to be, almost like, well, from the doctor perspective, it's all about hubris and clout, right? Look what I've created, look what I did, and that's kind of very much the Christian doctrine. I say that because I was raised Christian, so I'm much more familiar, but they all have elements of this, of the whole purpose of mankind was God created man to bring glory to him, to praise him. I mean, it's just totally narcissistic, just like Dr. Frankenstein.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's anti-free will if you really get down into the foundation of it, the philosophical basis.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
great.
great.
Yeah. I went through Christian school and everything, so I feel you, Logan. I feel what you're saying, and you bring up a great point. And yeah, Frankenstein. That was one I actually, like I was saying, I've always been fascinated by, but all of them for their own reason. I've always kind of I could draw these parallels, and so you have a list, Will. Like, is Dracula must be on the list?
It's alive.
It's alive.
All right. Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's go down the list. Number one, I had vampires, and you can incorporate Dracula. Dracula being obviously the most famous out of this character.
King Daddy vampire.
Yeah, exactly. Which it is Dracula. The character
and then they
came
became all
from
sparkly and mass produced.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Fluid. It's interesting. Yeah, Dracula comes from actually a supposed real person, Vlad the Impaler.
Vlad the Impaler.
Exactly, which he used to impale his victims at, during a wartime. I believe this was in the Dark Ages. And he would drink the blood of his victims. So that's where they get that character. But, so vampires are often associated with themes of seduction, immortality, and death. They represent the shadow archetype as they embody suppressed desires and instincts. So I'll say that as like an intro to this.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I mean, what strikes me is it's basically a textbook Satanist. And I don't mean like from the Christian perspective of devil worshiping or anything, but actual true Satanism is a mindset. It's a religion. And it's really just boils down to egotism or autotheism. In other words, I'm God, I'm the center of the universe, I make up right from wrong, and things like that. And when you're in the satanic mindset, you actually, even though you're obsessed with power, the more you get consumed with this mindset, the less you actually have power, because you're losing connection to source, which is the source of power. And in this way, the only way to sustain is to feed off of the literal life force or the blood of others. And that's what the entire system is vampirism. They're feeding on people like a parasite. That's what it is, just like the vampire bat.
Exactly.
They literally have to take in order to survive, to sustain themselves.
That's so
But the funny
true.
part, that when it comes to the lore of vampires, is you have to let them in. You have to basically consent. So it's interesting that they added that element of free will in there, because it's very true. As like really, aside from just all out violence, which is actually a really poor and inefficient way to control people, you can't control people without them giving their power to you. And again, that is what the whole system is predicated on, is manufactured consent. Because the vampire doesn't knock on your door and say, "Oh, let me in. I want to suck your blood and turn you into a monster." It's all about seduction, and the charisma of the vampire is very seducing, and you kind of fall under their spell, and you invite them in, and once they're in, it's fair game.
Yep.
That's
Exactly.
That is so powerful, and it's right. I just think of the whole the charisma, and I look at it when I look at it in a bigger sense, I think of like just how they program people through social media, through TV, through all the social engineering, is that seduction that they get people. They let people. That's how people get kind of that's how they get in. And and you guys may come at it from an angle. I come at it from, you guys brought up great points, and I came at it when I think of a vampire, only because it's happening in my life as we speak, and with a couple of people, is an energy vampire, which is kind of what we are touching on, is this whole energy and the feeding off of it. But for me, I definitely know that there is energy vampires that feed off of your energy, and especially when they're close to you. And I feel it. There's a couple people that you can feel them drain your energy. Like, you can be in an amazing energy, and then they come around, and 10 minutes later you felt like you're drained, like you have no blood left, no energy. They drain it. And I'm serious. I feel it. I just am I like,
Yep.
And what's
for
really
sure.
cool, what's really cool, Logan brings up, is you have to invite this in, and that's a really important point. I choose to be around these people. I have to break away from that, because I'm letting them do this. So
Yeah,
absolutely.
boundaries.
You have to consent. You have to know your boundaries, for sure. And this is what the vampires do, right? They appear as just regular humans, right? But they operate in the shadow. They're covert. So that's where the seduction and the manipulation comes in. So so you can consent to this, and absolutely the blood is the life force. And another thing that's interesting is, how do you kill a vampire? A vampire cannot get direct sunlight, which sunlight being light of knowledge, of wisdom, of truth, exactly. That will immediately set ablaze to a vampire, or
alchemical.
a stake through the heart, right? Stake through the heart signifying care, because a vampire is careless. They're half dead.
Great point.
They care about themselves and sustaining themselves. That's the only thing they care about.
Correct. So the stake through the heart is you caring for yourself and your boundaries. It's metaphorical, which could be cutting off the narcissistic vampire or the parasite.
Yeah,
stake through the heart. Like, oh, that hurts. Stake through the heart.
Yep.
And that's you saying no.
And I also always like to bring in the gender polarity or the sexuality aspects to it, of like, not only are vampires very sexualized anyways, because again, it's about seduction, and it's usually, their victims are women, right? That like fall under their spell, and then it starts as like kissing and groping, and then all of a sudden the fangs come out. And, even this idea, I mean, women get turned on by like, oh, he's like biting your neck, and then all of a sudden he's like sucking your blood. You know what I mean? Like, it's very sexual. But those fangs are penetrating, right? And so when you drive that stake, you're kind of like reversing the polarity, because they're acting out of a false or a dark care, and they're using that to basically kind of, it's a form of rape, but with their teeth, right? Penetrating you. and then you have to take that, you reverse that back, and you pierce their heart. That's an interesting kind of way of
Absolutely.
looking
It
at it.
really is. Yeah. Like, and how many people actually break down these monsters like we're doing? That's why I was so excited to do this show, was to kind of get past just the Hollywood version of it and kind of tie the
Yeah.
correlations
You got to
between.
have the occult background.
Exactly.
That's what it's, occult really all, it speaks in symbols. That's what
Exactly.
it all really operates through. One other thing I wanted to throw in there too, about, because we were talking about the whole consent thing, is that really kind of puts some light on the whole victim mindset of, like, when people complain about people in their life, and everybody's treating them poorly and this kind of thing. Is like, they're not taking responsibility for the role that they're playing. Does that mean that's totally their fault? Not at all. I'm not. Yeah, I don't believe it's right to completely blame the victim and say it's it's all your fault for this happening. But it takes two to tango, right?
Exactly.
You have to take personal responsibility for the role you're playing. Is it right to suck people's blood? No, but who invited them in, right?
Yeah.
Who said who was falling under their spell, basically, and
Exactly.
at the very least, like, it doesn't excuse what happened, but that's the opportunity to take inventory, to reflect, and to say, how did this happen? What are the choices that I made to lead to this undesirable outcome? And therefore, the most important, always, back to the natural law perspective of cause and effect. What caused this, and therefore, how can I prevent it from happening again?
Yeah.
Very true. Yep. That's a
This
great.
one, yeah, this one's great because, I mean, the allegory and how it's archetypal, and the metaphor is extremely relevant. The social engineers are a class of human beings that operate in the shadows. They see humans as cattle to feed off of, right? But yet they need our consent. The real power lies in each and one of us, and strength in numbers. They need the consent of the masses. So it's a really good allegory.
I agree. Yeah, this was gonna. I knew he was gonna, like, this whole vampire one was gonna be a great one, Will, because of how it's so relevant, like, to what is, when you break it down like we are, to what's going on. Another one that I think is very big, right, to dive into is the zombie, because
That's number
that's how
two that I had on the list.
there
Yep.
you go. See what I mean? We're thinking of, like, break her down, Will.
Absolutely. So, zombies, like a reanimated creature corpse that feeds on the flesh of the living, right? Extremely popular. Night of the Living Dead, The Walking Dead. I find this very relevant today as, the mindless masses, a zombie that's just lightweight animated, where they can just move around and do basic functions, but yet don't have the capacity and the activation of the higher human characteristics, the holistic intelligence, right? With logic and reason. So, it reminds me of, apocalyptic type scene. Oh, like The Walking Dead is a great example, right? This is also why the social engineers call the masses the unbegun or the dead. They don't have that self-knowledge.
Yes.
They're zombies. They're not self-aware that they are zombies, that they are ignorant.
That's actually how, in their twisted morality, they justify what they're doing to us, is because we're not acting like human beings. We're not activated in our humanity. We are literally, acting through our pure animal instincts, and therefore what they're doing is the same as doing it to animals, right? It's it's a twisted sense of their morality, basically. And what do zombies feed on? Brains.
That's right.
So
it's a good point.
about that.
Yeah.
What
the
are they
lack
lacking?
thereof.
What are they hungry for? Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it's also been used a lot for predictive programming, as far as a deadly virus that, ravages humanity, and then oftentimes there's a literal like a vaccine that comes in that's what like saves the day. Interesting.
Yeah, I've actually heard them in certain times. You'll hear them even say like, "Oh no, this could turn in." They do mention like a zombie virus, the odd time. Like you'll hear that buzzword put out there, like it's subtle, but it's there if you listen. I've caught it a couple times. I'm like, they're already setting the stage for something.
Wasn't in the movie I Am Legend, wasn't it actually the vaccine that gave people the virus?
Yes.
Yeah. See, that I find that really interesting.
That was a good movie, by the way. Like just for the whole, like you're saying, diving into it and the vaccine. I was thinking of that earlier because I knew we were going to be talking about zombies. I'm like, what movies really kind of got me like thinking and like, and that was one of them. You know, the vaccine. I was like, wow.
Well, another one that's extremely relevant. Just look at the genetic modification that's going on today in people's health. You know, the majority of people, if you look at a collective level, right, their health is horrible. So, I mean, people are putting this technology and this artificial stuff in their body, and it's breaking down their body. But logic and reason are gone. They're mindless. They're brainless. So yeah, they feed off the brains. You to kill a zombie, you need to cut off its head or destroy its brain. Which, I mean, that's kind of significant. That's like the only firing off that's actually animating the body, probably, for the flesh signal. Box. Yes, electrical signal.
I was also thinking about the dehumanization aspect of it too, because for some reason zombie violence and gore and stuff, it just doesn't hit the same as like a living, healthy human being. And so it's like this dehumanization of just seeing all these movies and video games of all this just completely, shotguns and just blowing all these dead, corpses apart, and it's still full of blood and it's all over the place.
And the gorier the better. That's what these movies, exactly. The gorier the better.
And the other part too is like there's always in every movie I've seen, there's always like this theme where some family member or a friend or something gets bit and then they're turning, right? Think about the allegorical significance of that, of like someone you care, like how many people, to the actual real virus outbreak was there that sort of event where a family member turned against you or because they got infected by this mind virus? Right. And then what, of course, in the movie, they're faced with this horrible decision of like, I'm going to have to kill them now or else they're going to kill me, which is the satanic mindset.
The infection of the mind is so, I'm just thinking because with the whole vaccine rollout and stuff like that, you're so right, Logan, because I lost friends and family members over this because I wouldn't get the vaccine. And it was this mind virus. Like it's you bring up a great point, and it just I know because it affected me personally. I like I was just saying, I lost friends, I lost a family member, just because of this mind virus that I had to get it. Like it was weird how it took over people. Like think about it, and so many people forget about that, but I just always remind people like this was a really big turning point, I think, in our history. Was this whole COVID thing that people are kind of like already thinking about, like they're moving past kind of.
Yeah. All right, should we move on to the next one?
Absolutely, we're rolling on time.
Werewolves next.
Werewolves is awesome.
Werewolves next. Absolutely.
I've been really looking for. This is one of my favorites, because there's just so many great symbolic or allegorical aspects. So I guess I'll just go ahead and just dive right into it.
Do it.
Of course, the first things first. What initiates the transformation of the werewolf? The full moon, right? So you've got astrology, you've got, the lunar energy, which represents the mind and the emotions. That's where moon comes from, is mon, a Germanic word that meant person or human and also meant mind. So the mind, the moon reflects the light of the sun, which is God. So the mon is we as mon, human, We reflect the light of God. We are the microcosmic creators and consciousness, right, in the flesh. So that's one thing. And the full moon has a profound effect on psychology. That's where the word lunatic comes from. To be a lunatic, you're crazy, right? A lunar tick. So yeah, that's the first thing that I think is really profound. Is, you know, and then that transforms the man into a beast.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll let y'all riff. I got lots, but I don't want to hog the stage. So
Go ahead. Well, great point still with the whole lunatic, and so many people are affected by the moon. It's incredible.
yeah, statistically, you can look at crime statistics are much higher on full moons.
Absolutely there. Yep. There's something going on.
Well, yeah, I would say, you know, the lack of knowledge and discipline within oneself. There is that impact energetically and psychologically and emotionally from, you know, the macro forces like the moon. And that has an effect on people, but people are completely unaware of its influence of, you know, of these forces. You know, the werewolf it represents the struggle between one's higher humanistic or civilized versus the primal instincts. When it's a full moon and it turns into the werewolf, it wants to kill and have sex. That's what it wants to do, which is very primal instincts, the beast mentality, which kind of goes back to what I was saying. That's rooted in that animalistic mentation. So there was something else I was going to say, and it just slipped my mind.
That's cool. I that's what I think of too. Well, when I think of werewolf, is the very animalistic and beast side of people, how they're like just in that animal mode, you know, where there's like it's just I think of a lot of things actually when I think of a werewolf. But that is the main one, is that it's just this animalistic drive. I guess is a good word for it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's very
So the next thing I can throw in there is what is the bane of a werewolf? How do you kill a werewolf?
Silver.
That's
exactly.
what it was. Yep.
So this is deeply alchemical. So in alchemy, silver is associated with the lunar, with feminine and receptive qualities. It's a symbol of purity, clarity, and reflection. So as opposed to gold, which is the masculine, right? The sun. So again, it's the transformation and purification, which is interesting because the lunar started the process and finishes the process. So it comes back into itself.
Yes.
But in alchemy, the goal of alchemy is to transform base materials into something more refined and pure, and silver is representing that the high quality product, basically.
Purity. That's what I was thinking. Right.
Yes.
Yep.
Purity.
Yeah.
Very
You
interesting.
could even say like innocence.
Very interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because that silver, the purity, it changes the werewolf back into a man.
Yeah. I mean, like, you could even think of this. Ooh, I just thought of this one. I thought of a point that perfectly does or like aligns with what I'm saying. So this idea of purity and the lunar, it's all feminine energy. So what typically is the thing that causes a person, a human, to behave as a wild beast? It's trauma, right? It's the imbalance of the masculine, where you have been taught through suffering that the world is hostile and dangerous, and therefore you have to be this raging rah to just to survive, right? And so that silver is like going back into the innocence, the purity of before that happens, like a child, which is associated with the feminine, right? Maturity is masculine. The childlike or innocence is feminine. So that's what I would see is it's returning to that innocence.
Yeah. That's
Very
excellent.
cool.
That's
Wow.
excellent, man. Well said.
Well, it's
Oh,
just it's just really
I
cool.
remembered the thing I
Go
was
ahead.
gonna to punch in there with that. One line that always stuck out for me from the movie Joker with Joaquin Phoenix is at the end when he's talking to the talk show host right before he, blows the guy away. He's talking about all of his reasoning behind his crimes and what he's done. And he's like, society, expects it can just abuse you and poke and prod you over and over again and think that we won't go werewolf. That's
Yep.
literally what he says. And I'm like, that is so profound because they know the people that design this world, this society, they understand this. And that's exactly what they're doing is they're trying to turn us all into monsters so that we're hostile and we're just perpetuating that chaos and that aggression and violence because that's the fuel of the control system. It's all based on fear. The world is so unsafe. We have to have government to maintain order. And just look, we've got all these shootings and the worse things get, the more people will be begging to give away their freedom and give that
Exactly.
control away.
Yeah, and what the messed up part, Logan, is that these social engineers are the ones doing the prodding and
Exactly.
and doing this to people, and a lot of people can't see that. It's crazy that they don't realize that these are the people causing all the division, all the fighting, all the wars, and they're just prodding. A great point you bring up.
Yeah, I definitely I hear what you're saying, Rick, too, but I also, I can't help but say that we are doing this to ourselves due to ignorance and the
Good
lack of
point.
knowledge. So yes, the social engineers are a heavy factor, but because humanity is lacking that self-knowledge and that knowledge of nature, natural law, I mean, we are consenting, bringing it back to the vampire. Another real quick one, because I know we're running out of time, is a demon. And yeah, it has
yeah, we got
religious.
like 5 minutes, Will, so we can get into a demon quick.
Yeah, well, demon comes
Demon.
from demon, divided mind. That's how I
There you
break
go.
that down. That's green language. In
Yeah.
the etymology, da is to divide, and then a daemon is a deity or divine power. This I think some of the first writings were from Socrates when he was talking about a divine principle. He was using it, and of course, the church comes along and takes demon from daemon and utilizes it to mean something vastly different. But the green language, daemon, divided mind.
Yeah, there's some perfect example of what I was talking about early on with the Christianity coming and just completely twisting everything around. And I wanted to mention what back with the when you said we're doing this to ourselves. This is what I refer to in my trivium hacking presentation as vertical and horizontal trauma. Is the abuse and the trauma comes top down from the control systems, the institutions, but then it propagates laterally, horizontally, and then we just perpetuate that cycle of abuse.
Yep.
That's a great, powerful point. Very true. And I'm glad you did say that, Will, because it's true. I always kind of forget to add that in, if I'm being honest. You like the poking and the prodding from the social engineers, but each of us have definitely a role to play in this as well. So I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think people need to hear that more.
So
accountability and responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a lack of knowledge, like you said, Will, of truth of natural law, but it's also a lack of healing. Because as I say, those two have to go hand in hand. Because without knowledge, you can't heal. Because it's like they say the truth hurts. It's because it's breaking your illusions. You need the truth to heal, but at the same time, if you aren't doing the healing work, then you will reject the truth when you hear it because it's clashing with your own delusions.
Yeah,
That's the masculine and feminine coming together.
That's
Absolutely.
a whole show right there. What you just said, Logan, that's a whole show.
Yeah.
Just breaking that down. And I just want to thank you, Will, and I want to thank you, Logan, so much for making this an amazing special show for me. It was one I keep saying.
Awesome, dude.
Yeah,
I really loved this.
Thank you. I looked forward to this, and I can't thank you guys enough for taking the time and coming to break this down. I'm hoping people now will start to look at these, these monsters that we're talking about and this whole time of year and maybe a little bit deeper level. So I can't thank you guys enough. Once again, I want to have you back again for sure and do another show like this, because I really think we get into some great topics and cover important things. So I just want to wrap it up. Will, can you give you guys at least a couple minutes each, or a minute each, to let everyone know, Will, where they can find your work, any presentations? What do you have going on for people?
Thanks, Rick. It's always a pleasure to come on here. We always have great conversations. Logan, my brother, always enjoy collaborating and getting in discussions with you. And thank you to the viewers. I hope everyone has a happy harvest. And you can find my content at willkeller.com. And I'm also a content creator on the One Great Work Network. So can't wait to be back. Thanks, Rick.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to put a link to willkeller.com in the chat for everyone. Please check it out, guys. Go ahead, Logan. Where can they find your work, buddy?
Yeah, absolutely. Been a real pleasure, both of you. Great meeting of the minds. I just want to say to the audience, a nice point to finish this is, remember that the monster is you. And it's the one looking back in the mirror. We all have these darkness, these aspects inside of us. It's important for us to go through that alchemical process and transform that into something useful, and then reintegrate it back into ourselves, not to compartmentalize it and then let it out to play once a year, because that's what we have now. So again, thank you. This was an absolute blast. I hope everyone got value from it. If you want to check me out, go to thewizardfactory.com. All my work is there, and definitely find me on YouTube, thewizardfactory.com, and follow me on Facebook, Logan Hart.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Logan. Thank you so much, Will. I did put links in the chat for both of your websites. So please, everyone listening, go check it out. There's so much incredible content and knowledge there. Please take the time to go look. And I hope everyone listening got some value out of this conversation. And maybe it makes you, like I said, look at things a little different, because it's always, like I say, scratch a little deeper and really start to understand what's going on. So thank you guys so much. This was incredible. Thank you, everyone who is listening and supporting me every week and joining me in these conversations. I appreciate each and every one of you. I truly, truly do, from my heart. And yes, have a great Halloween. And I will see you guys next week. Take care, everyone.
Listening to Revolution Radio.